Yes, we are live. Welcome back, my dear friends. This is episode number 126 on the Zero Point Healing Show. And today I have with me an amazing new thing that we are going to talk about. Maybe we need to call it a healing modality. It's called the systemic psychotherapy. And just now I'm getting introduced to it. So I'm looking forward to this session and this conversation about systemic psychotherapy and what that is and how that can change our lives. Before I move on to the guest of the show, just a quick intro about me. I'm Vishnupriya. I am certified in multiple different holistic healing modalities. I am a full time holistic healing practitioner myself, running multiple different holistic healing businesses, in fact. And through my journey into this holistic healing world, I could see how so many different holistic healing modalities, these tools have personally changed my life. And it has been for me like, wow, this is such an amazing thing that I had been living without. I didn't know about anything about holistic healing until I was like 28 or so. So I was thinking to myself, wow, if I had known about holistic healing and so many different opportunities and possibilities with these tools, my life would have been totally different. And that is also kind of an inspiration that I got from that made me create this platform called zeropointhealing.com, which is a web directory that I've created for all holistic healing modalities. And there is so many different holistic healing practitioners. I could see that unlike medical industry, holistic healing is so unique. Each modality is so different from each other. At the same time, it also has something in common. For me, going through, so right now there's about 60 different holistic healing modalities that is registered on zeropointhealing.com. When I began, I just had the knowledge about 6 to 8 different ones, and that was what I was expecting. But when I launched the website, it each person who came into the directory introduced me to a new different modality. And every interview that I'm conducting here as well, it's like opening new doors, opening new possibilities into what else can happen in our lives, what else changes, what other new possibilities can open in our lives. All right, so that's zeropointhealing.com, and that's me. If you are a holistic healing practitioner yourself, you can jump on to zeropointhealing.com and you can create a profile. And if you're interested in one such interview with me, you can contact me for that as well. With that, I am now moving on to my guest here. Welcome. I forgot how to pronounce your name. Can you help me there?
Hazel,
Hazel.
Hazel.
Hazel, Hazel. Yes, thank you so much for coming into my show, Hazel, and it's such an honor and so excited to learn about systemic psychotherapy as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into, I see different modalities that you got certified as well. Tell us your journey into holistic healing world.
Thank you for having me, Priya Vishnupriya. So, my name is Hazel Hyslop, and I live in the UK. I've been living here most of my life in London. Well, I'm originally from Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And my journey into this healing modality started as a young person in Tobago, really fascinated by the sort of mental illness and looking at how my country, my community worked with people who were ill, who had mental illness. It wasn't something that, people talked about and was sort of scared of. It was what when someone had an illness, like mental illness, the community took care of them, looked after them. But I had a fascination with sort of the people. There were only a few people that you knew that something wasn't right, and you were told when you were young to kind of stay away from them because just to be safe. So I wanted to kind of understand more, and so I wanted to study more psychology and sociology to understand how human beings behave, how people think, how they tick. And my fantasy was to leave Tobago and go and study psychology so I can then come back to Tobago and open my own um, sort of therapy clinics. I wanted to do sort of rehabilitation work. That didn't happen. But that was the kind of what led me to that curiosity in terms of mental health, human behavior, and how people behave. So I came originally to the UK to do psychiatric nursing, and then I studied psychology, then systemic psychotherapy, and then coaching. And so I now work. I found out that I couldn't necessarily just describe myself as just one or the other. I sort of started to recognize that all of these parts of who I am or how I've been trained are integrated within me. So I needed to find a way that I could then express that through my work. So I feel I work more holistically and integratively now in terms of the skills that I've developed. So and so yes, so now I do practice as a systemic psychotherapy as well as a transformational coach. But I find that when I'm in different contexts, I'm the same person that shows up, so I can draw on all the different skills that I have in doing the work.
Wow, that's a beautiful journey into this entire thing, and I see how it's different from your place. So now let's talk about the systemic psychotherapy and what that is. Maybe you can give us some examples about how you used it in your own personal life and how that has
Mhm.
transformed your personal life.
So systemic psychotherapy, in the sort of the briefest sense, it sees family, it sees organization, it sees community as a system. Within that system, there are different parts of the system, different members. So for example, in a family, you will have different members in the family, whether there's father, mother, son, daughter, and each person within that system has a role or function, and it's the same in organization. And so what happens for example, in a family, you find that the family would have sort of like traditional set roles, and when things are going well and the family system is healthy, they can function together and do quite well. However, when there's a crisis, or for example there's a trauma within the family or an illness, a problem, etc., the system can then become stabilized. So it means that, for example, when I work with children and families, say for example a parent brings a child who suffers with anxiety. What happens is that although the anxiety is felt within the child and so internally, the symptoms of anxiety and the way in which the affects the child would affect the family system. So it might cause the mom to get upset. It may cause a lot of tension and argument and disagreement in terms of how the child is being managed. So that's where the system becomes destabilized. So the idea of systemic thinking is to try and make sense of the problem, try and understand what's going on within the individual, but try and understand how each individual within that family is relating. So you're helping maybe the parent to understand what what is happening to the child, helping them to see from the child's perspective what might be going on for them. But equally, you're trying to help the child to understand how the illness might be impacting um, on the parents, etc. So I guess in my own personal life, I think it kind of shows up in different ways. So for example, basic thing would be if I have very noisy neighbors, and when they're kind of being very noisy and disruptive, I get quite irritable and I start complaining and just really being fretful. And so my behavior affects my family. If I'm in an irritable mood or a bad mood, it affects the family way. I'm complaining to them and it's sort of disrupting their life because it's just that's all I'm talking about, how noisy the neighbors are. So it kind of then has an impact where it paralyzes me from moving forward or being able to focus on anything else in my life except worrying about the neighbors. But not just that, I'm kind of like expecting my family to collude with me and to have the same experience, whereas they might be thinking differently. So I'm not giving them an opportunity to then give their opinion or to ignore the neighbors. So that's kind of the most basic way in which so it has a knock-on effect. Whatever the problem is, it has a knock-on effect on everyone around you, and that can be a negative or positive impact.
Wow, it's a totally different way from kind of what I've been kind of functioning and using from. So now let's go into working in alignment with your values, what that
Mhm.
actually means, and how systemic psychotherapy has, tools, or maybe how that can be implemented in our lives.
So I sort of thought about the topic because recently I've had a number of clients who have been coming to me, and it's been a theme that's been showing up in my work. And it kind of fascinates me because what I'm noticing in that it's that just let's just generalize and say most people kind of put the focus on success and achievement on external factors. For example, your focus might be, I want to earn a lot of money, I want to build a home, I want to have the ideal relationship. And so in that moment, you're sort of placing your emphasis on the values, or the external values that you're placing your emphasis on. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes that if we focus too much on that, the external values, we kind of miss the opportunity to understand who we are, what our purpose is, etc. And I noticed there's kind of like a theme around people who, set of people that might be considered the ones who are awkward, or like the quirky people, sort of people who you might call unique or different, or you might find the odd ones, someone who's different that has never fit into society's expectation of what the ID should look like. Most of the time, people like that might struggle because their values don't necessarily align with the kind of the norm. So if you're someone who is quirky and you're kind of unique and you're sort of odd, and you're working within an organization, you're not necessarily going to fit into that organization because you're expected to work within, the line and the discipline of the organization. So you're not meant to express your views or your feelings in the way in which you want to. So, for example, for me, I consider myself as someone different in terms of like the organizational context, where um, I might want to talk about my spirituality, that I believe in God, that I practice my spiritual belief. But when you're in that situation, you're not able to do that because you're told that you're not meant to talk about your religion or your spirituality within that context. So in that way, you're not being able to be your full self, and you restrict the person of who you are in order to fit in. And that happens with a lot of us, that we're trying to fit in to be someone that we're not. And it stops us from being our full self. Or we're trying to fit into the idea that you have to, look beautiful, or you have to look a certain way to be successful. So what happens when you're trying to live that life that's not unique to you? You may hit a barrier where you're starting to see that you're feeling quite stressed and anxious, or feeling isolated because you don't fit into that context. And then you may get to the point where you start to think about, well, who am I? Like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Because I've done everything that I should have done according to what society says. I went to school, I went to college, I went to university, I got the job, or maybe I got married as my culture expected me. I had the children, I did all of that, and yet I'm not fulfilled. And so you get to a stage where you're starting to think, well, um, one of my favorite author, Joan Scott, talk about that, especially for women. She said that women get to a certain stage in their life, maybe in their like mid-30s, 40s, where they've done everything. They've done the career, they've done the marriage, they've done, the children, etc., if that's your choice. And then you're realizing that you're not fulfilled, that you're not happy. And sometimes they may make a decision to leave that relationship or leave that job, but yet still not clear as to what they should be doing. So you get to a stage where you start to think about, well, I've done all of this, I've left the job, I've left the relationship, but I still don't know what I'm doing. I still don't know who I am. I don't have a goal, a purpose. So that's where you would start to recognize that you're not in alignment with your values. And I suppose my challenge is to help clients to start to think about where you are right now, kind of what values is kind of what it leading you to behave or to acting this way, and what can you do to change to come back in alignment with your values. So when you're back in alignment with your values, you're able to make right choices. You're able to choose the right career or the right relationship in order to move forward into your destiny really.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing that, how it, and I totally resonate with what you're saying about, in alignment with values. And I guess that is what happening in my life as well. For the past
Mm-hmm.
1 year, I've been kind of, until then, I felt I was going in a totally different direction that wasn't my kind of direction, even though, yes, all of that had to happen. But now I feel more in alignment with what I'm here to do, what my values are. And I also see how that is directly related to my life satisfaction. So when I am in that alignment, that satisfaction of life automatically steps in. That's amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
now, would you like to? So let's say there are so many people watching our show. If any of them would like to kind of book a session with you, how does that session look like? What would a person go through? Maybe you ask them certain questions, or how does that session look like basically?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on whether they're coming for therapy or coaching, although there's still a similarity. So if someone was coming for, in terms of wanting to do a coaching session around their life or their goals, the first thing would be really in terms of what I call location, like trying to locate where are you right now in your life. And I always think about like that sort of metaphor of if you were in a car and you're on your journey to somewhere, see your life as a journey. And what I encourage you to do is just stop for right now and it, try and get a sense of where your location is, what's going on for you right now, what are you feeling within yourself, what is the story that you're telling about yourself right now, what has your journey been like, what is this, so we're trying to make sense of what the current problem is, what the problem or the impact on your life has been like, what is it stopping you from doing, what is getting in the way of not achieving your goal. And I may be thinking about, okay, if you were, so the systemic aspect of this is if say you were in a relationship with other people, I might be saying, what would your family say about you right now, what would their understanding of the problem be, what advice might they give in order to help you to move forward. So the first session is really about locating where you're right now, to try and make sense of the problem, try and make sense of your journey. And then we'll be trying to then kind of establish your goals in terms of where would you want to be, say in 3 months' time, what that might look like, what might you need to do in order to achieve that. And a lot of that comes with really deconstructing the problem. So I might be looking at kind of, with systemic thinking, we're looking at lots of different elements in terms of race, gender, family background, your age, identity, etc. So the questions that I ask would be trying to understand how you form your personality and your character based on your culture, your age, and your race and your gender, etc. Trying to understand what belief system that you've developed through those lens of your family, etc., and kind of how that has created your value system. Because most of us were born, when we're born in a family or culture where our value system is kind of given to us or taught to us. And some of those values are not necessarily values that we want to maintain. They can become quite limiting in terms of not allowing us to move forward. So part of my role is to try and understand what values are influencing your life and your decision, and what limiting beliefs might be in the way that's stopping you from not achieving or not experiencing life as it is. And so, yeah, so there are different stages really. And so that would be probably the second stage. The third stage would be about looking at the blocks. What is stopping you? What is getting in the way? All the obstacles that might be getting in the way of your progress. And that might be self-doubt. That might be negative thinking. It might be a trauma. A lot of people who've gone through trauma may find that they're just disconnected emotionally or disconnected from life. So they're not able to make decisions or move forward. So part of that is to try and help you to kind of clear those blocks. And then once you're clear in terms of that there's nothing that blocks you and you're clear about your values and your goals, then you can start setting goals, and then you can start looking at alternative ways in which you can then move forward to achieve your goals.
That is so amazing. Would there be any examples of, let's say, client stories about, how somebody, you might have done a session with them and what kind of changes and shifts they had in their lives?
So yeah, so there's quite a lot, but I was thinking of one that I recently did yesterday with a client, and she's talking about being in her marriage, and she's from an Asian background, and she was talking about like being married to her husband. They're very much happy together, but the thing that actually stops her from actually like gets in the way, not just in her home, but in her at work, is that she's been told that she's too rigid. And when I went through the session with her, and I started to kind of for her to tell me examples of what that rigidity looked like, what came out from that, because one of the questions I would ask is about, tell me one thing that you've learned from your mom about, your work ethics, or tell me one thing you learned from your dad about your work ethics, or your community. And from interviewing her, what came out was that actually some of her values were around, she was someone who liked socializing. So a high value for her was about connecting with people, contributing to society. She liked her independence, she liked her freedom, and she liked having choice. So those are five values that were very significant for her. On the other hand, her partner, her husband, he was much more kind of family orientated, where he family visited, came and went when they wanted to, but actually didn't really socialize outside of the family as much. So he wanted her to just adapt to his kind of way of thinking and just be available whenever the family members moved, came to visit. But she wanted to actually have the freedom to go out with her friends, to join different groups, to do what she wanted. So when I started interviewing her, it became clear that it was because both her and her husband's values were in conflict. It was an aha moment for her, because she realized that actually I'm not rigid. And I have a lot of examples of where I've been really able to compromise, and I've been really generous with my time. And the thing is, he's the one who's rigid. So we started talking about, okay, how can you two work together in terms of having different value system, because some of their values are similar. And so she started to think about when I need to start um, not denying myself and not discounting my progress, because I've actually done a lot in terms of contributing and giving into my marriage. So I need to have a list of the things that I've done to remind me that I'm not a rigid person. But I also need to challenge him when he says that. I need to ask him about, tell me what you mean by when you say I'm rigid. What, give me an example of when I do that. And so I think it was more kind of a revelation to her that she was actually not trusting her own instincts, and she was actually
Hazel, are you able to hear me? You got stuck.
compromise, things would be better. I got
Yes.
stuck.
Yeah, you
How
got
long
stuck
was I?
for just few minutes and now you're good.
Okay. So where was I stuck?
Just just small bit. I think we are good still. You can continue.
Okay. So maybe people got the most of it. I'm hoping.
Yes, yes.
Like,
That's beautiful. And would you want to give us maybe one other story of how maybe working? So maybe you should also kind of mention what are the different kind of services or programs, that you're offering. And maybe with that you can also tell, how somebody might have changed their lives using that.
so I offer individual psychotherapy, individual coaching. I offer group coaching. Am I getting stuck again? I think your internet is freezing up. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you.
I think your internet froze. Your internet froze. Did you hear me?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I offer individual psychotherapy. I offer individual coaching. I supervise therapists who have just qualified or just going through their training. I do group coaching. So part of my package is to offer work for people who've gone through trauma. So anyone who's experienced trauma in abuse, neglect, etc. Offer services for that. For someone who's going through a lot of transition, for example, um, career changes, leaving home, going to university, going through a divorce or bereavement, etc. That's part of the service that I offer as well.
That's beautiful. And now, maybe from there, can we move into where it actually connects? Like, for example, the story about any maybe one other person as well, how that kind of impacted, and especially, I guess it would be helpful with working in alignment with our values. If you want to speak a little on that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was coming into this call about my mom, because I think she's a perfect example of someone who right now works in alignment with her values. So growing up in Tobago, my mom has come from that old-fashioned system where the community then the men would home. So she couldn't work, she couldn't have a career. Her dad didn't want her to go to college. Um, and when she got married, it was the same with my dad, who recently passed. He also kind of wanted her to stay at home. So she had six children, seven, one died. And when she got to the age, and she always loved baking and cooking, and she loved people, she loved sharing, she loved being part of like different groups. But when she got to probably her late 40s, going into her 50s, she decided to open a shop because people always told her that she should have a shop because of her food and her baking, etc. And initially, the shop, she just started just baking, like making breakfast for the men in the plant nursery, what we call bacon soulfish. And and just gradually, there were few children who were coming to the shop, and they were not, I think the parents went to work and forgot to give them breakfast, or they weren't getting breakfast. So she would just give those one or two the children breakfast. And then she started talking to the head teacher about these children, and she started saying, well, these children are not, they're coming to me regularly and I'm giving them food, but what's going on with them? Are they okay? So the head teacher then decided to start paying her to feed these children. And then from that, the education authority decided to then invest into feeding the whole school. And so that was one school, and then the next school, so the two schools in the village that they started feeding, all because my mom just followed her dream in terms of baking and cooking. And for me, the values there were that she was someone who was giving. So that's giving service to society, service to community. She was contributing in making a difference. She was doing the thing that she loved, which was creating food for people. She was actually being part of a community which is connecting to different people. And her goal wasn't to make money. That wasn't the focus. It was just using her talents and skills to make a difference. And of course, she wanted to make money, but that wasn't her highest context. That wasn't her highest value. But because she was doing what she loved, money came easily. And she moved from someone who didn't have a job and was just making a few dollars a week to someone who at the time would have been making like $5,000 a month. So from zero a month to $5,000 within a few weeks, just because she followed her heart and she followed that part of her that's with integrity to give back, to make sure that she was contributing to feeding these children. So for me, that was someone who really followed their true values, follow the skills within them, and then from there was able to profit in a massive way. And to me, that's kind of well, that's my mom is a phenomenal coach, really, because she was doing something that she wasn't doing it for external validation. She wasn't doing it to get fame, because we see the current society and where people are just doing it to get fame, to get for validation. She was doing it because her heart said, let me make a difference. So that's kind of my best story and values and working within your values.
Wow, that's an amazing example that, how a person's life can absolutely transform in that short time with such a huge impact, making a huge impact for the society and people as well. Wow, those are amazing. Thank you so much, Hazel, for introducing us to the systemic psychotherapy and how that can actually transform. And my dear viewers, if you would like to book a session with her, you can have a conversation with her, and there's also a 10% off discount coupon. The discount coupon is 0 point. If you want to contact her, just let her know that you found her from 0 point, and she would give you that 10% off. Wow, that was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Hazel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. So, my dear viewers, I'm going to see you next time. If you would like to contact Hazel, her link is right below or above the video, depending on where you're watching this. So, you can click that link and you can contact her. You can have a conversation with her and see how she can help you. Thank you so much. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe, and you can also share this video with anybody who would be benefited from watching this video. So thank you so much for all your support. Thank you, Hazel, for coming in and giving us this beautiful gift here. Thank you.
No problem.
Alrighty, so I'm going to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.